Hi everyone. In this video, I'd like to talk about relationships. Why are they so difficult, especially our romantic relationships? Why do we sometimes struggle with social anxiety? Why do we struggle with friendships? Why do we sometimes feel like people don't really like us? These things are complicated, and there are many reasons underlying why we struggle with close relationships so much when we come from a narcissistic family. So let's have a look at an article I've written on my website, Why Relationships Can Be Difficult, and let's go and have a look. Why are relationships often difficult for those who've come from a narcissistic family? One of the issues which troubles many people who come from narcissistic families is that they struggle in their relationship with others. This can be with work colleagues, school or university colleagues, friends, acquaintances, family members, and romantic interests or partners. The struggle is in the inability for many to feel close or safe with others, and it's there for many reasons. Some people struggle to have any close relationships. Some have a couple of people to whom they're reasonably or very close, and others have many people around them. And these relationships may be superficial or they may be closer. Many may feel isolated or alone, even with people around them. A person's capacity to feel close to others will vary. Some may find that they can feel close to others, and others may find themselves feeling more numb towards others and might know that they like a person, but it may be more intellectual than emotional. Others may find that relationships of any kind feel nerve-wracking or even terrifying, and they may avoid them as much as possible. Why does this happen? So everyone's different. Some of these reasons I'm going to list may apply to you, some may not, but we are all very unique. And all of these things I'm going to list as well, we can put on a spectrum. So some of us may have some of them a little bit and others really a lot. So self-awareness can help us to see where we are on the spectrum with each of these different things. So why does this happen? Our attachment styles. We each have an attachment style which we develop in the first year of life, and this stays with us into adulthood. Our attachment style shapes the way we behave in all our subsequent relationships, but we can see it especially clearly in our romantic relationships. Romantic relationships can be especially challenging for many people with a narcissistic parent. Some will go on to find themselves with narcissistic partners in adulthood, and others won't. Many people will have an ambivalent, avoidant, or disorganized attachment style to others. This means that they will struggle to feel secure in their relationships with others, and in general feel that they will not get their needs met. I'll put a link to this article in the description, and there you can click on a link which takes you to an article about attachment styles. On a few of these articles there are links where you can go and read more about those particular subjects if they interest you. Complex PTSD. Many children of narcissists will have developed complex PTSD, and one of the ways in which this manifests is in disturbances in relationships. So there are 6 criteria, and that's one of them. If you would like to look at a questionnaire which can help to identify if you may have PTSD or CPTSD, people can have one but not both, you can find the International Trauma Questionnaire either on this website, and there's a link there to take you to that, or on their own website where there are translations into many languages. They maybe have 15 or 20 languages on there. The questions around disturbances in relationships are: I feel distant or cut off from people, and I find it hard to stay emotionally close to people. The International Trauma Questionnaire focuses on defining whether a person has post-traumatic stress disorder, which consists of re-experiencing in the here and now. So this can be feeling flashbacks, when you feel really intensely, or it can be visual flashbacks or auditory flashbacks. There are lots of ways in which it can happen. Avoidance is another one, and sense of current threat. So this is feeling like we're never safe or something bad's going to happen. Chronic expectation of danger. I have a video on that as well. Or from the International Trauma Questionnaire, you can also see if you have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And the criteria for that are affective dysregulation. So this is feeling emotionally unstable. Having a negative self-concept. So there's lots of shame, self-loathing, self-doubting, not liking the self very much. And there are disturbances in relationships. So struggles and difficulties in having relationships with other people. Isolation and loneliness. For some people, there is a feeling that they will always be alone in some way. They may feel that they are so damaged they could never be loved, and that if anyone really knew them, they would be horrified of what they would find deep down. For some, it can feel preferable to hide and feel like it's not worth trying to get to know people that will ultimately reject them anyway. Some will struggle to imagine a life with friends, a successful romantic relationship, and a feeling of general contentment and moments of happiness. So for some people that doesn't even feel possible. Isolation, which is being separate from others, and loneliness, feeling alone when you need the support of another, are an issue for many children of narcissists. Some people can find themselves lonely even when they have others around them. Isolation and loneliness may be maintained by thoughts and feelings which we have had for so long that we take them to be facts, such as, no one could ever like me, and if somebody really knew me, then they would see that there is nothing there. I am a monster, or I am defective. There can be an expectation that every relationship will end in drama, rejection, and pain. Many people may struggle with being alone and the fear of loneliness and will therefore cling to others. Many fear the feeling of a gnawing emptiness, which can feel overwhelming. Loneliness and being alone are different, and for some, being alone can feel very safe. No one can hurt us when we're alone. So we're all unique, so we're all going to have developed a different style of coping and different ways of feeling about the situation that we find ourselves in. I am boring. Many children of narcissists have an ingrained core belief that they are boring. For a child who cannot elicit the interest of their parent, this will be the logical conclusion that they will come to. I must be the dullest person in the world, as even my own mother, father has no interest in what I think, have been doing, or where I would like to be in life, or what I would like to achieve. This has a serious effect on a person's self-esteem and self-worth, and we can end up thinking that we don't have much to offer others. We may feel grateful that anyone even speaks to us at all, let alone be able to value ourselves as equal to another person. Some people can feel a lot of pressure to be funny or entertaining to others. Just showing up as themselves does not feel like it's enough. Feeling like an outsider. I am odd, weird, or strange. Many people feel like an outsider or an alien, or they feel as though they do not really belong anywhere. Many have been called crazy or mad and had their mental health questioned by their narcissistic parent. This will make people feel that there is something wrong with them, and this can be exacerbated by feelings of being disconnected from themselves and others, and derealization, which is at times feeling like the world is not real, and depersonalization, which is at times feeling like a person's not real, which are two conditions that many people have as an outcome of narcissistic abuse. Some people feel like life is like looking through a window at a party at which everyone else is enjoying themselves and to which they have not been invited. And actually, many people find that they want to be invited to things, but then when they do get invited, they don't actually want to go because there's so much social anxiety. So people want to be feeling liked and included, but then sometimes they're crippled by their social anxiety and then will struggle to make the most of those opportunities to get to know other people. Going to social events can make people feel under pressure to perform, to put on that mask and facade, be entertaining, funny, because, in their core they feel like they're boring or a monster or there's something wrong with them. Relationships can feel exhausting. Many people are hypervigilant when around other people. This means that they are hyper aware of the facial expressions, body language, tones of voice, and the things that people are saying. This is a protective mechanism which develops in early childhood, and many will feel it is their fault if anyone looks annoyed or angry, and they may try to fix the situation by cheering the person up or finding out if they have annoyed that person. This is a safety mechanism, and it is also caused by children of narcissists feeling overly responsible for their own feelings and the feelings of others. So that's something that develops in early childhood. We may or may not be consciously aware that we are doing this, and we may minimize the amount of time we spend around others by avoiding making arrangements to meet or by making excuses not to. And we may need a lot of time to process and decompress after being around others. We may end up pushing others away, either consciously or subconsciously. And if we are people pleasers, we may feel unable to say no to people when they ask for favours, and this can lead to relationships feeling exhausting. Relationships feel transactional. When early childhood relationships with parental figures are based on the parent getting their needs met in some way and not in compassion, empathy and care for the child, then the child can grow up with a feeling that all relationships are transactional. So they will be looking for the real meaning and subtext in all situations. They can feel that nothing can be taken at face value, as they think that people don't really mean what they actually say. They always really mean something else. People can be seen as manipulative, and there are paranoid ways of thinking. This paranoia stems from very real experiences where the narcissistic parent did have the worst interests of their child at heart. Trust issues. Many children of narcissists have deep ingrained core beliefs that other people are not to be trusted. There is an expectation of being betrayed, let down, disappointed and hurt. We may be very suspicious of others and at times almost be like a detective trying to solve a case in our questioning of situations. This can be difficult to overcome, but it can be done. Perhaps a part of a person's defences will always be a little on guard, even after significant recovery has taken place. When moving into the adult world, where some people will be genuine, compassionate and kind, there can be thoughts of, what do they really want? Why are they being nice? No one is that nice, and they are up to something. So lots of suspicious questioning of others when we've come from a narcissistic background. Fears of abandonment and rejection. A fear of abandonment is a deep-seated fear of being left by people that you are close to. This fear affects your thoughts and behaviours. It is rooted in childhood from physical and emotional neglect or from an event such as the loss of a parent through death or divorce. This trauma results in an individual developing a fear or expectation that this will happen again. These fears are painful and can lead to avoiding others or clinging to others, and this causes issues in relationships. So we can be too needy, too suspicious, too clingy, which is an unhealthy way to be. Conflicts in relationships. Many people struggle to be able to resolve conflicts in relationships and may retreat or withdraw if one happens. They are likely to have learnt that any conflict has a pretty big outcome, such as the narcissistic parent going into a rage, being highly critical, or not speaking for hours or days on end. There may have been physical and emotional violence. They may have had their possessions broken or been told to get out of the house for a long period of time or for good. There is often a high price to pay for any conflict in a narcissistic household, which is why submissive defences are the go-to behaviour. Many also feel if they stand up for themselves, they will be rejected. The fear and expectation of rejection may feel unbearable. Eye contact. Many people from a narcissistic home struggle to make prolonged eye contact with others and may find themselves looking down and away a lot. If we have regularly been looked at in a judgmental and disapproving way, we can come to fear seeing people look at us in that way. Making eye contact with others may feel confrontational, and submissive body language develops, which signals to others that they are not a threat. Humans bond with others through eye contact, so this can cause disruptions in relationships with others. So here's a quote from eneuro.org, which is, recent MRI studies have revealed that eye contact activates the social brain. When the social brain or the social cognition system is activated, it enables people to understand others by forming social impressions, which explain how and why people do the things they do. And we are able to consider the thoughts, motives, needs, and feelings that other people may have. And here's another quote, which is, eye contact or mutual gaze conveys the message, I'm attending to you, thereby promoting effective communication and enhancing social interaction. Struggling to maintain eye contact will interfere with social interactions, and experiencing our own social pain or seeing another person experience social pain, such as being excluded, rejected, or bullied, activated the same brain circuitry as physical pain. So that's really interesting. Personality disorders, depression, and PTSD, among other conditions, are known to interfere with social cognition. So it really disrupts things in terms of how our brains can process what's happening properly. Emotional dysregulation. People from narcissistic families will often be triggered a lot of the time, especially when they are around other people, as this has been dangerous in the past. And this means that they will often be in the mammalian defenses of fight, flight, freeze, submit, and attach, and won't be feeling relaxed and able to talk freely. So here's a quote from verywellhealth.com. They say, it takes almost every part of the human brain, arguably the most complex thing ever created, to work and play well with others. Humans have uniquely complicated social interactions, which are controlled predominantly by the prefrontal cortex. This can control and override more immediate responses, so that even when we are feeling angry or insulted, we may be able to respond gracefully. The prefrontal cortex, so this is the logical reasoning part of our brain at the front here, is said to go offline when we are triggered, and we go into an automatic response from our repertoire of defences. So I have an article which addresses the mammalian defences, and I also have a video on that also if you'd like to watch that. So if the logical part of our brain is offline, then we're going to struggle with regulating our emotional reactions and then feeling calm when we're interacting with another person. So that can be causing an issue for some people. Over-explaining, oversharing, undersharing, rigid and porous boundaries. A boundary can be defined as a barrier which separates two things. Healthy psychological boundaries between people mean that there is respect for others and the self, and the beliefs, ideas, opinions, likes, dislikes, and wants and needs of all parties. A psychologically healthy person is aware that they do not have rights or ownership over another. Healthy boundaries create mutual trust. Children in narcissistic families are punished for trying to set boundaries and are conditioned into being passive, compliant, and dependent from a young age. Boundaries are unhealthy and can be porous and or rigid, and there can be a lot of enmeshment, which can be defined as the state of being entangled or entrapped with another. Rigid boundaries. Rigid boundaries can be created in families where there is little physical or emotional contact between parents and child, and the child meets their own needs, and or it is not safe to be vulnerable. Being alone, mistrustful, self-reliant, and hypervigilant feels safer. Examples of rigid boundaries. Difficulty in saying yes, as it may make a person feel too vulnerable. Defending oneself with a wall which protects us but also keeps other people out. There can be a strong feeling of wanting to avoid others. There may be a guardedness about personal information, as there can be a fear that it will be used against you in some way. There is an avoidance of asking for help as it can feel vulnerable. We are open to rejection or feeling obligated to others. Needing help can feel dangerous or like a weakness. So there is a lot of self-reliance, self-sufficiency, and independence. Porous boundaries. Porous boundaries can help people to read their parents better and other people and adapt more easily to the current mood or situation. They can be very in tune with others. This can mean that some have difficulties in knowing the difference between their own and others' opinions, preferences, and feelings. Body language may be submissive and a person may look as though they can't defend themselves. Examples of porous boundaries. Difficulty in saying no and saying yes when you don't want to. This may result in many boundary violations. Expectations of being rejected or there being serious outcomes to saying no. People pleasing, valuing other people's opinions over your own. Giving too much or sharing too soon in relationships. So a sign of this is a very intense relationship. People move in together really quickly or they get married within a couple of months. These kind of things are clues that people have porous boundaries. Over-empathizing with others and agreeing with their views. So you may agree with someone else's views more than your own while you're with that person. It may take some time and distance to come back to your own points of view. So being alone and then decompressing afterwards can help you to come back to more of a sense of who you are. So we can get quite taken over by other people sometimes. Many people will have a mix of both styles in different situations and with different people. The issue of undersharing information, feelings of shame and rigid boundaries, and oversharing, porous boundaries and feelings of needing to explain a lot due to feeling misunderstood or being unable to find the right words so that others can understand, can mean that others who are from more secure upbringings may feel uncomfortable. A person who struggles with managing boundaries may seem off to others as they find it hard to judge the rules which others live by. Shame. For some, there can be a fear of other people seeing into them and seeing how bad of a person they think and feel they are. Many people carry a burden of shame which can feel overwhelming, and they struggle to make sense of why it's there, thinking that if I feel shame, I must be a bad person. A person can carry deep-seated feelings of long-standing shame because it has been used as a weapon in their childhood home, and it is also a survival mechanism because if we are submissive, then it can deflect attacks from aggressors. So I have an article on my website on shame and also a YouTube video on shame also, which explains more in depth how it works as a survival mechanism. Projection. We frequently project our beliefs about ourselves onto others and may presume or expect other people to have thoughts about us that we have about ourselves, such as, people don't like me, they think I'm boring, they think I'm unattractive, etc. So we might be having a conversation with someone and then we'll be thinking, they think I'm really unattractive, they think I'm really boring, they think I'm stupid, they don't like me anyway. You know, all these kind of things that we believe about ourselves, we may project onto others. Body dysmorphic disorder. A significant number of people with narcissistic parents suffer from body dysmorphia to some degree. Narcissistic parents are generally very highly critical of their children's appearance, and this can result in their children having very critical thoughts and extreme feelings of dislike towards their bodies and their faces and their hair, all parts of them. This can interfere with relationships with others. People may feel they want to hide away and not want to socialise, or they may be very self-deprecating about themselves to others. Causes of body dysmorphia are thought to be perhaps genetic, a chemical imbalance in the brain, or traumatic experiences in the past. It can be comorbid with obsessive compulsive disorder, generalised anxiety disorder, or an eating disorder. Eating disorders are also common for people from narcissistic households, and this can interfere with people's ability to socialise as they may struggle to eat in public. Substance misuse. People often use substances to escape from the uncomfortable feelings they have. Addictions can help to regulate our nervous systems and calm us down and ease any anxiety. The need to drink or take drugs can mean that we become too uninhibited, and sometimes the need for a drug can overtake all rationale and lead to dangerous situations where we may be self-sabotaging, reckless, or impulsive to our detriment. People who are from a healthier background may find this kind of behaviour baffling or shocking, and they may struggle to understand it or empathise and may seek to distance themselves. So these things can really get in the way of relationships with people. We often, if we have a heavy addiction, we'll end up socialising with the same kind of people so that we can feel comfortable with our addictions there. We're less judged. We can normalise it. We can pretend it's not such a bad thing. The inability to feel joy. For many, there can be a struggle to feel the many positive emotions that come from having close relationships. In the book, Healing the Traumatized Self, the authors speak of studying anhedonia in women with PTSD, which is defined as the inability to feel pleasure. They found that support for an interference of negative effect on a person's capacity to experience positive affect, especially feelings of shame, in response to imagery of positive social events and in response to positive self-referential referencing. So this means being praised or being shown your picture while you're listening to a list of positive adjectives. They found that people struggled to have positive feelings there. Thus, two characteristic responses to generally positive stimuli were observed in traumatized persons. In the first case, individuals reported feeling affectively blunted, detached, or numb, not experiencing joy or pleasure in response to stimuli that should normally provoke such responses, like receiving a compliment or a gift, or a sign of another's physical affection or embrace. In the second case, traumatized persons reported feeling negative affective reactions to positive events, such as feelings of shame, anger, guilt, and unworthiness, emphasizing that negative feelings such as anxiety and shame were getting in the way of the individual's ability to experience positive affect. So what can be happening here is triggering. So something nice is happening, we're given a compliment. Our harsh inner critic comes in and says it's a lie, they don't really believe that, or they believe it but they don't really know you. We have ways of protecting ourselves from feeling positive things because it can feel safer to not feel nice things about ourselves, and it can feel safer to not have any self-compassion. And my next video is going to be on self-compassion and why we often don't have much or any. So this is going to be influential for many, as the stresses of being close to others can outweigh any perceivable benefits. If we are struggling to feel any of the warmth, closeness, joy, or affection for another person that comes from a positive relationship, then there will seem to be little benefit in having close relationships. The inability to feel more positive emotions may mean that we have a negative outlook on life, and we may complain a lot and be pessimistic, and this can be difficult for other people to be around. We are in black and white thinking mode when we do this, and we're not in a realistic place. Recognizing these patterns in our thinking is the first step to changing them. I wanted to read some parts of the book Healing the Traumatized Self. It's quite a complex book. It's not really for the layperson. They have some interviews in here with people suffering from trauma. So I thought I'd like to share a couple of those interviews so you can get a sense of what a person's internal life can be like. So here we have a case of the feeling of being soiled. Interviewer: have you had the experience of not being able to feel positive emotions like love, joy, pleasure, or not being able to smile or laugh easily? So Tim, who is a veteran medic of the Vietnam War, answers, yes, I have. I struggle most with what the feeling of love feels like. Interviewer, can you tell me more about that? Tim, in some ways it is disabling. I can do things that I think are loving, but it seems as though there is an empty spot there. Interviewer, can you tell me more about that? Tim, for instance, I encourage my wife. She belongs to a book club and they meet once a month, and I'm supportive of that. I feel like I'm doing loving things when I'm supportive of that, and I let her know I'm glad when she has these outside activities. She gets a lot of pleasure out of her book group. Providing for that and encouraging her to do that are loving things that I do, but I struggle with knowing what love is. At one point, I end up going out and reading books about love, trying to figure out what love was and how I was supposed to be feeling. I found some explanations, but there is a lot of mystery about it as well. I still struggle with this. I think I have a real problem being loved. I feel uncomfortable, extremely uncomfortable. When somebody finds out that I served in Vietnam, when they say thank you, I practically turn inside out with discomfort. Interviewer, can you say more about what that's like? Tim, I guess almost I can say embarrassment from a gut level standpoint. I can feel it in my gut and my stomach, and I can feel it in my head. And everything inside of me is screaming, no, no, no. And although I've developed techniques to say you're welcome, or at least behave appropriately, inside I still have this terrible conflict. When somebody says they appreciate anything about me, I have terrible trouble with that. Basically, it happens anytime anybody says something that could be construed as loving. Can you give an example of that? Tim, I have a terrible problem with birthday presents and birthday cards. I have a problem with receiving anything. Part of that is something that's been my experience since Vietnam. There is a part of me that is still dwelling in unworthiness. There are a lot of thoughts and feelings connected with feeling as though my government was trying to throw me away. There are a lot of questions about that. If that happened, how can I still be worthy? Something is off balance there. And then here's an interview with someone called Julia. Interviewer, have you ever had the feeling of being emotionally numb? Julia says yes. Interviewer, can you tell me a little bit more about it? What is it like for you? Julia, I have absolutely no clue. It's nothingness. I don't know what it is. Interviewer, can you describe what emotional numbness is like? Julia, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. I know what it is to me, but I don't know how to put words to it other than that you are numb. That's what it is. I don't know how to describe it other than you are numb. It is what it is. The numbness is not a feeling. That's just how I am. So how do you say how you are? You just are that. So that's an example of how we identify with our automatic responses and our procedural responses, these feeling flashbacks. We think that that's just me, but actually it's a trauma response. So some people really struggle to find the language and the words to describe how they're feeling. So it can be good to look at one of these emotion charts or body sensation charts, feeling charts, and they can help to give us language to describe how we are feeling. And here's an interview with Erica. Interviewer, the feeling of being emotionally numb, is that something that you've experienced? Erica, yes. I think that's when I lose time. I think that I just go dead. It's not just emotionally numb, it's physically numb. There is just nothing there. It's vacuous. It's like I'm in a hole. I'm a lump of flesh. I'm an amoeba. I'm a lifeless life form, or lifeless, or not sentient. I just exist. It's almost like not even a slug. I think that a slug must at least have instinct. I don't even have that. An amoeba, it's the best way I can describe it. I'm just existing and I don't have any other words. So it's incredibly painful. People's internal world. So now I'd like to read something more positive from that chapter, which is someone who's been through some therapy and they're much more in touch with those joyful emotions now after feeling those numb feelings. Interviewer: tell me about your ability to feel joy and pleasure over the course of recovery. Jen says, oh, that's been something. There was a time when I couldn't feel it at all, and there was a time that when I did feel it, I had to numb it with alcohol and drugs. It was just too painful. I did not deserve to feel good. And then there was a time when I could feel just little tiny bits of it for just a little bit of time. Over time, the bits got bigger and the time got longer. And now I have days where I'm joyful and happy. I have weeks where I'm joyful and happy. And I have months where I'm joyful and happy. I do a lot of weeping. I can just lie on my bed and it's like my eyes just weep. I try not to examine it too much. I just let it happen because I know I feel better afterwards. Does that relate to a feeling of joy and pleasure? Jen, yes it does. I guess I cried tears of happiness. I guess that's what it is. My life is so much better now, so much better. And as a result, my son has benefited. I get so much joy from him. And I'm so thankful that I can look and listen and learn from him and enjoy him. I have the freedom to enjoy him now. And what does the enjoyment feel like in your body? The interviewer asks. Jen, it opens up here. So she points to her chest. It's kind of a warm, not hot, but just slightly warm feeling. I can feel joy because I'm looser and it feels like I'm lighter. It feels like I'm in nature. I can take a deep breath now. Enjoyment too makes me open up, and sometimes it just makes me ecstatic and it makes me giggle. And it makes me feel like a child that's healthy and okay. So lots of people speak about this in therapy, which is that feeling of lightness that comes when we've unloaded our burden that we carry, and those dark, heavy feelings of trauma and shame and guilt and the horror of what we went through when we come from a narcissistic family. So healing is possible. It really is. I know lots of people feel hopeless that it's not sometimes, but it is. Romantic relationships. A romance between two adapted selves. I'll put a link in the description to a video that talks about our adapted self. So we have our real self, which is suppressed, and then we have an adapted self, which we've adapted into being because we were growing up in a hostile, critical, difficult environment. When we come from a dysfunctional background, we are often attracted to a romantic partner who is from a similar background. This can often mean that both parties are living in an adapted version of themselves. And it is the two adapted selves who are having the relationship, which will inevitably fall apart, as James F. Masterson says in his book, The Search for the Real Self. Although there are many definitions and styles of love, from the perspective of the real self and its development, love is the capacity to acknowledge the other's real self in a warm, affectionate way with no strings attached. The welfare of the partner becomes as important as one's own welfare. Building an intimate, loving relationship with another is the way we overcome the essential aloneness and isolation of the self as an adult. There are all kinds of illusions that make it appear that intimacy is working for a couple, even when, on closer inspection, what we find is not a healthy interchange between two real selves expressing and reinforcing their capacities, but a pathological contract between two false selves which, although it may seem to survive for the moment, inevitably falls apart. So James Masterson uses the expression false selves, but I prefer the expression adapted self, personally. The relationship works for a while as it suits the requirements of the adapted self, in that it works with our defences and feels like the safest way to have a relationship. James F. Masterson again. A good illustration of this is the couple who always fight in public to the extent that friends wonder why they even stay together. The answer is simple. They stay together because they fight so much. It works for them. The classic example of this is the two borderline personalities who project the withdrawing, disapproving parental image onto the other, so that they do not have to feel and be aware of the associated depression. As long as they are angry at their partners, they do not have to feel depressed. For them, the conflict is preferable to feeling intrapsychic depression. If you ask them about their relationship, they are always having difficulties. But actually, in a pathologic way, it is a relationship that works for them and satisfies the needs of their false selves. So basically, what he's saying there is that we're avoiding feeling the underlying abandonment depression. So he speaks about that a lot in his book, and I also speak about that in one or two of my videos, of which I can't remember the names now. I'll put a link in the description. So there are many ways in which we avoid the feelings inside ourselves. So having a relationship with someone and then projecting our issues onto them can be a way to deal with avoiding seeing that in ourselves and feeling that pain. With healing and recovery, our relationship with ourself changes. We move out of our adapted self as our old defences subside, as we no longer need them. And we move into our real self with its healthier defences, and subsequently we will have different demands from all our relationships, and especially from romantic relationships. We can break the cycle of being in relationships which are unhealthy for us and ultimately unrewarding. Lack of social skills. Many people feel very uncomfortable with making small talk with others. Many children of narcissists spent their childhoods being quite isolated or being bullied for many of the reasons above, which I've just spoken about, and this can have an effect on their social skills. Social skills can be learnt though, and we can become proficient at small talk and conversation in general over time. There are many YouTube videos which can help with learning these skills. So there's a link to a couple of them in this article if you want to go and have a look at those. Resolving the issue of connecting with others. Resolving trauma will help with getting to a place where anxiety around others is not so uncomfortable or paralysing. This can be done by developing our self-awareness and/or with the help of a good therapist. The relationship with a therapist can be for many the first time anyone has truly listened to them and shown them empathy and care. We may be able to speak about things we have never told anyone before, and this can help to lighten our burden, process the heavy feelings and memories we carry, and lessen the shame. All these things will help us to relate to others better. So then I've listed a few suggestions here, like learning the art of small talk, improving communication skills. There are linked to a couple of YouTube videos there. Working on the ability to sustain eye contact with others. So being aware if we keep looking away from people, or when we're speaking to somebody, we're always looking over there, for example. These things can all be worked on and repaired, but the first step to that, of course, is self-awareness and knowing what we're doing, and then we can correct it. Practicing grounding techniques in social situations can help signal to our nervous system that we are safe and help us to feel calmer, and this can prevent us from becoming so triggered. This is really useful because when we are triggered, we are feeling like we're really in danger, but actually we're not. We're just talking to someone at a party or at the bus stop or in a taxi or whatever situation that we're in. Grounding techniques can be really helpful. Grounding techniques are things like mental techniques where we think of all the blue things in the room. So it's a way of focusing on the now to bring us out of that feeling flashback, we can call it, when we're triggered. Or it's pushing our feet into the floor or clenching our fists, or doing a deep breathing technique such as the 4-7-8 technique, which is breathing in for the count of 4, holding it for the count of 7, and then breathing out slowly for the count of 8. So the breathing technique is something that can be done with no one knowing that we're doing it. So that can be a good one to use when we're socializing with people. If you want, you can study how other people behave, and this may help you to be more aware of the boundaries that a person from a healthier family may have. Notice when you have porous and rigid boundaries, and if there are any times when you have healthy boundaries. So maybe there are times when you're relaxed enough to speak to other people. This might be when you're speaking one-on-one with someone, for example. So very common for people from narcissistic families to feel comfortable speaking to one person, maybe two people, but large groups of people can feel really intimidating and overwhelming. So many people don't like that at all when they've come from a narcissistic family. Working on self-acceptance through self-awareness will help to build confidence and help us to feel less shame. This is going to be useful, of course. Emotions are the language of the body, and tuning into these and our body language and sensations can help us to be more in tune with boundary violations, and we can get more of a sense of how boundaries should actually be. So our bodies are telling us what healthy boundaries are all the time, but often we have to tune out from those when we're living in a household where we're not allowed to have any, or we're finding we have really rigid ones in some situations and really porous ones in other situations. So our relationship with our boundaries might be quite fluid. So tuning in with our emotions and those feelings can be really helpful. So for example, if someone's standing too close to you, you're going to feel uncomfortable and want to move back. Our conditioning might tell us, stay where you are, don't react. They might be angry, they might feel rejected. You know, there can be lots going on for us. And some of these thought processes might be subconscious even, we might not be consciously aware of them. But the more we tune into our bodies and then take the cues from our bodies about what healthy boundaries are actually. You can experiment with hobbies. Hobbies can help us to find ourselves and what we do and don't like, and also give us content to talk about with others. So often as children of narcissists, we don't have any hobbies. We might be a workaholic. We might not really know what we like even. We might like what our partner likes. We might like what our children likes. We might go along with others rather than knowing ourselves. So this is safety, again, a safety mechanism. That's how we've survived in the world. So experimenting with hobbies can help us to find ourselves and give us lots of stories to tell people. If you can, remember what you liked to do or what you wanted to be in childhood, as there may be clues there as to what you may excel at or enjoy doing the most in terms of hobbies, interests and work. So those are a few of the reasons why we struggle in relationships, and some of you might have some of them, some of you might have all of them. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, you might have some to some degree and then some to a larger degree, as we are all so unique and different. So I hope that information was useful to you. I think it's really useful to know this stuff because there's so much shame around relationships. Some people struggle to have any friendships, and that can be really difficult, and there's lots of self-blaming or feeling inadequate, like we're a bad person because that's happened or that's happening. But it's really complicated to come from a narcissistic family, and we're dealing with a lot when we're establishing relationships with people. So thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. Bye.